All right. Well, welcome everyone to Dragon Tail Books. And tonight we have Meagan Frank, and she's going to talk about her book For the Team and how parents and adults can navigate the youth sports scene and how it's changing. And so thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me. So I am certainly curious about the sports stories of the people in the room. This is helpful for me to know which parts are going to be of value. So maybe introduce yourself. And
John Hove, and I'm 80 years old, but I coached soccer and hockey and all those things through the years. But I am now kind of dismayed because things are definitely different than they were 60 years ago.
Yes, they are. So did you coach here in Menominee?
Later, yeah, because I came here when I was 45. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The kids are in hockey here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hove, H-O-V-E. Is that how you spell it? Yeah, I think I have actually heard of you. It's sports lore. It's English lore.
I've heard of you too.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm glad to hear. Thank you for coming.
You're the soccer coach.
I am currently the girls soccer coach. I've coached the boys as well, and over the last 10 years have been involved with the high school. But coached at Stout for 5 years too for the women. So yes, a lifelong coach as well. So there's some camaraderie there, most certainly. Okay, how about you?
My sister has 4 kids, and all of them are involved in or have been involved in baseball, or well, Caroline's just turned 5, so she was in t-ball. But so I often spend my summers with them, and I've seen them they have had really good experiences. But I also have heard of some kids having. Our cousins had not so good experiences where the coach, I think he was 7, 8 years old and had been sitting on the bench the whole season because the coach was only putting in top players. So
At 7 and 8.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, and likely I'm sure he'd identified professionals in his mix that were going to be ready to go, right?
Yeah.
So
it's really comparing these two experiences where it was awesome for my sister's kids, and then the completely different experience that my cousin's kid had, and he never wanted to go back.
Yeah, sure, and ruined the joy for him, right? Which is devastating, and I think the most impactful mark on a coach. I think if you can't have a kid return the following season, there's something that needs to be. Especially at 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I see it when they're in high school and they're starting to determine what their sport is going to be, and they start to kind of focus, which that's one thing, but to lose them when they're that little, it's really devastating. So, and how about, I'm going to throw you in too, because I know that you.
Well, I played lots of sports in grade school, and then played volleyball through high school. And I played volleyball as an adult as well.
Still?
I haven't here because it's hard to break into the volleyball scene. I don't know.
Is it really competitive? Do they have tryouts?
I don't know. I played one term with this team, but
they didn't invite you back?
No.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you to open that.
So I don't know why, but so I haven't played in a while.
But the bars have leagues, like.
Yes.
I know, but it's like you have to find people.
Dean and Sue's, yeah.
There's not like an open, you can't.
There is. I need to go Monday nights at high school, I think.
It's just open volleyball.
I need to do that. And I attempted hockey for a little bit.
Okay.
Here at the adult league, but it got pretty late, and I was so bad. And then some of the advanced players would come down to the rec league, and so then it was getting fast, and I'm like, yeah,
and that's not fun.
No.
You're scared first of all for your life, and yes, and likely in the way of someone who's skating a little faster.
But it was fun to learn. Everyone was like at the beginning, they're like, yeah, you could do it, and but yeah. Okay. And my niece and nephew, my sister's kids, they play soccer and run.
Okay, so you have access to children involved in sports too, at least in the peripheral.
Yeah.
So I often talk, I often start these talks with where when I was giving my pitch to agents trying to get this project published, my pitch was this. My husband was the hockey player. This is what it is. My husband was the hockey player, but I'm the one who broke up the fight in the stands. And it worked to get me into a lot of rooms to kind of talk about where this project would go, including the publisher that ended up publishing it. So the story is alluded to in the book, but it's not completely explained. So I'll tell you the whole sort of story. When our kids were little, we lived in Stillwater, Minnesota, and all three of them played hockey for Stillwater. My oldest at the time was 9. And so we went for his squirt hockey tournament in Fargo, North Dakota. I had all 3 kids in tow. My husband was also a coach, and he coached college. So he was somewhere else in the world coaching his team, and I had all 3 of our kids on this hockey trip. The 7:30 a.m. game that came around on Saturday morning, I had all my kids there. I had my son dressed. We had everybody ready to go, and I was crammed into this stands with everyone. It was likely the worst hockey rink I've ever been in before or since. It was awful. And everyone was there. You could feel the anxiety in the room at a level that I hadn't actually experienced before. Now I know it was because this first game was going to determine what happened for the tournament. If you won, you moved to the championship bracket. If you lost, you were going to be in the consolation bracket. So there was a lot of interest in how this team of 8 and 9-year-olds was going to do at 7:30 in the morning. On my right was a dad from my son's team. On my left was a dad from the opposing team. And as we watched, it was a tight, really, squirt level intensity hockey game. And it was tied. Third period, the ref, who was probably 15 and maybe had gotten out of bed and just rolled onto the rink, made a call. The dad to my right from our team was not happy with this call. So he told him that. He yelled that at the ref. Well, the dad to my left was in complete agreement with the call, and so he yelled at the man on my right. This happened now. They were going over my head, posturing and yelling, and they had no idea that they'd forgotten that I was standing there. The hair on my neck went up. I could feel a fight about ready to happen. And in that stressful moment, you either freeze, you fly, or you fight. So I froze initially, realized I was not going to be able to get out of my situation because I was stuck in the stands, thought for a second about whether I could simultaneously punch both of them, but opted not to. Instead, started to just cheer as loud as I could. Go Ponies! Go Ponies! You're amazing skaters! You're the best hockey players! Keep fighting! Go! Play! For 10 minutes. Because every time I would come down, these 2 would start back up again. So I yelled for the whole game. And I was exhausted. I have not been that kind of fan. I hadn't been before nor since. And anyone who's ever watched me coach knows that I am one of the quietest people on the sidelines. So this was incredibly out of character for me. That night at the hotel, when you take children on a trip, you put them to bed and you quietly either sneak into the hall or into the bathroom if you're going to do anything adultish. So I called my husband and I was like, I can't do this. I cannot parent in this environment. I don't know what we're going to do. Our kids are 9, 7, and 5, and I know we want them in sports, but I'm not equipped for this. I'd been in sports my whole life, and as an athlete, all those emotions that you feel when you're playing, I had learned how to manage those. I had learned what to do when I was upset. I'd learned what to do when I was in a successful moment. I had learned all those emotions. That was fine. And even as a coach, I'd had a lot of experience. And thankfully for soccer, they put the parents on the other side of the field most of the time. So I hadn't been in the parent environment until that morning, at least to that level. So when that happened, I realized that I was in a lot of trouble if I was going to be sane and thoughtful about how we were raising our kids in the sporting environment. And so I had to do something about it. I had already done a project similar when I wrote a book about marriage, because I figured out kind of the hard way I wasn't really ready to do that either. So I started a research project and I invited a whole bunch of women and we had tea parties, all of whom had been married 30, 40, 50 years. I asked them all sorts of questions. I collected as much research as I could. And I learned how marriage was going to work for me. So I thought I can do the same thing with this youth sports thing. But this time I'm going to gather men and women. I'm going to call it huddles. And we're going to have conversations about what their experiences are like from the coach standpoint, from the parent standpoint, from the grandparent standpoint. And I just collected a ton of information. I sent out 500 surveys. Some were online, some were in person. I talked to people all over the world, actually interviewed several experts, and then just collected as much research as I could because I needed to have a lot more tools in my bucket than I had to start. It was a 12-year project, and I did it the entire time we were raising our kids through sports. So it was unbeknownst to so many people, I was doing research in the side, like as I was writing. It actually helped me to be analytical and just to decide how the people they were either needing some of the information quite immediately, even though I don't do unsolicited advice, but that's really what happened. So I would collect things kind of as I went, and I joined every board I could be on to kind of see what that was all about, and took on the boys soccer team pretty much for the same purpose, not because I was so gung-ho about coaching boys soccer in a football town, but more because our son was there and there was a need. And so that was why I kind of followed that trajectory as well. So yeah, so this book is a conglomerate of all of those stories, everything that I collected, and got me through. If you haven't read the book yet, the spoiler alert is that I survived youth sports, and I am here to talk about it. I have chosen now at this point in my coaching time, after a lot of work that I had to do personally with what sports meant to me as a young kid, that because that's the one thing that I found is that your personal sports story informs everything about how you engage in sport. And as a coach, as an adult, it's part of how you show up in your emotions, whatever emotions you might carry in the sporting world. And that's where we emote. So it matters if you have any sort of self-reflection about what your story is. So that's the first question that I asked my huddles. And it is the question that I'm going to ask since it's small enough now. If you were to describe your sports story as an athlete, so not as what you've done, as a coach, because you have a storied history there, but you can back up to who you were as an athlete. What's your sports story?
Well, I was a farm kid, so if it was football in the fall, it was basketball outdoors in the wintertime.
Outdoor basketball?
Well, shooting on the barn.
I got you. Okay.
Fortunately, I had two older brothers and one younger, so we had a built-in team already. And then the neighbor kids would come over. So it was, and then in the spring and the summer it was baseball. So 3 sports, and that's all we knew. Never heard of hockey, never heard of soccer or lacrosse or any of that stuff when growing up in Iowa. But it was just the thing you do. And because I had older brothers, I was pretty good at it, because thank God they corrected you and brought you along. So I felt I was adequate, and in baseball I was pretty good, and it was always fun, to play. And it was kind of like, it was frustrating, because like you say, you only got 5 people that get to play basketball, and we had basically 10 good players in my high school when I was a senior. So I thought I was going to play all the time, but I only played, third of the time. So I was not happy. But baseball was, baseball was my sport. So that was the one. Then I went off to college. I said, and my coach said, you could probably play baseball in college. Well, I was going to go out for the team, but it's a big college, and Iowa State. I looked around and said, oh, these guys are twice as good as I am. No, I'm done. I'm just playing for fun. So intramurals and all that stuff was my thing. And I always liked playing, and I had a good time, and I had very few bad experiences, so I was pretty happy playing. And likewise, I have 2 boys, and they brought them along. We always were doing things in the yard and stuff like that. And they learned it. They still play hockey as adults out in the East Coast. So they're in club teams.
What was your parents' involvement with you as an athlete?
Pretty much zero. Okay. My old man was a farmer, and he says, well, he'd take us to the game or something like that. That's about it. He didn't play himself. He was overweight, and my mom was always busy doing things. So But they were interested. They'd show up
They go
for the
and they
high school
support.
games, you know, the football games and basketball games, they go to those, but.
Okay, but not helicopter parents. That,
No.
Yep. Okay. One of the generational differences.
Yeah,
right?
it was a whole different world.
It was a very different world. Yeah. How about you? How would you describe your sports story?
I think like trying my best, but not being stressed about it. Maybe so I was in tennis and track in high school, and I grew up in Metro Detroit, so we had a huge track team. And I was on JV, so we had the varsity team and a JV team, and I was in long jump and sprinting. It's okay at long jump, okay at sprinting, but the coach was talking to the varsity team, and I remember him saying, all of you varsity players, look at Kristen. She's slow, but she pushes at the end. You need to push at the end. So I always felt really good.
Okay.
I knew I was slow. I was trying my best, and I was gonna push at the end. So, and like for tennis too, I was at the we had first singles, second singles, not so varsity. First, second singles, and then four levels of singles, 4 levels of doubles varsity, then 4 levels of singles and 4 levels of doubles JV, and I was fourth doubles JV. So most schools were not big enough to have that.
Somebody can play. Yeah.
So we got third place of 3 teams who had third doubles or fourth doubles. But I had fun, you know, and I always try my best. So I guess that's my story.
Did you enjoy your teammates?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the high school coaches were good at making us not like saying only the varsity, the ones that matter, but encouraging everyone to do what they could in different ways. Sure. So we had different desires.
Sure. Different reasons for why you were there.
Yeah. But I remember what my coach what that said about me as a message to the varsity.
And you know, it's interesting to me because of all the people that I've interviewed, it became very apparent to me how careful I needed to be as a youth coach with the words I chose. Mm-hmm. Because one sentence could be something that they remembered. And I'm glad it was a positive sentence, because oftentimes the sentences that people remember were very painful. And I would interview people who had thought about that sentence for 30 or 40 years and they would tear up. That's how much it hurt them to hear those things. So it's hard as it is for me still. It happens even now. I'm coaching the girls team right now and know how conscious I need to be about it, and still run into either the way that it's interpreted and it's a constant and a continual effort to try to make sure that you communicate the truth of what you want them to know, because what they actually remember is sometimes not at all what you thought they would. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that it was a positive remark that you remember, but I'm not surprised that it's something that is at the top of mind, that mattered to you, and things like that. How about you, Aaron?
Well, so in grade school, we played softball, but it was like it was a Catholic school. So we played 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders together. And so, but then you played other people from the same school. So it was this like families coached, you know, like dads. And then basketball, we played from 5th grade to 8th grade. And we had one good player, so it seemed like we were always just passing to her. So the basketball wasn't, and I didn't like running, and I watched my brother play soccer, and I'm like, that's too much running, so I never played soccer.
Good decision.
So then, yeah, volleyball we played, I think it was 6th through 8th grade, and yeah, I don't remember who the coach was. Like, I think it was just a parent again. But then in high school, yeah, like, so my freshman year, I'm trying to think if I actually played. Like, I don't think I played freshman year. Like, but I like practice, and then JV, I started every game. And then junior year on varsity, I figured I wasn't going to play, right? But I think the other setter got hurt, so that I got to play. And then senior year, I started senior year. But it was, and I learned how to play tennis. I learned, but I have found that individual sports, not good for me. Like, because all of, like, if you mess up, it's all me. But but on the team sport, and the coaches would say, just shake it off and move on. And I could. Like individual sports, like tennis, I get so frustrated. I get really competitive. But teams seem to like
dissipate it a little.
Yeah, and then I could shake it off. It's like, so yeah, playing volleyball is like, okay, I messed up, but like move on.
Right.
Like the next play is coming.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, but yeah, individual sports, I get tense.
Yeah, I think that's likely why I gravitated to team sports too. And the positions that people play in team sports are also interesting. I have a conversation with my husband, who was a goalie in hockey, and I was a center midfielder in soccer. So I am used to being in the middle of everything and the chaos and orchestrating. And that's basically, I don't know if the personality comes before the position or you kind of gravitate to the position. But my husband is very just defensive minded in general, just will block a lot more ideas than go with the flow sort of thing. If I really were to, and he would agree that's definitely his personality. And he also is we talked about this most recently, that for him, it's an all or nothing thing, because if you're a goalie, you either save it or you're scored on. And there's no in between. There's no gray area. So it's kind of an individual position in a team sport. So he has a really interesting understanding of what it is to be part of a team. Because certainly he is, as a goalie, but his job is very singular. It is his own thing, right? And we have a daughter who played goalie too, so I had to learn how to parent, which I had no choice but to step into this then when I had a daughter who was a goalie. So they exposed me to all sorts of things that I had to work through for myself. Part of, my own personal story, which is, I'm going to read a little bit from the book. This will give you the start of why it became something super important for me to have to do this entire project. This work was for my own sanity, my own selfishness. It's from chapter 6 called Injury Schminjury. As a junior in high school, my 16-year-old athletic body broke in 2 places on a basketball court. In an instant, I went from an indestructible, competent athlete to an electric wheelchair-riding invalid. Oof. All that had been my identity was shifted from speed and competence to seated contemplation. I depended on help to drive, to shower, to dress myself, and to even get my things from my backpack. Not a moment of it was pain-free. 6 weeks of casts and doctors, 6 weeks of looks and snickers from insecure teenagers. My boyfriend broke up with me. Several friends quietly slid up the stairs I couldn't use to follow them. And eventually, some people suddenly slipped off the friend list entirely. By the time I limped myself back onto a soccer field, I had been profoundly and permanently changed. It was a pretty horrific fall, witnessed by possibly 90 baseball players who had gathered on the bleachers for a preseason meeting. I joke in the retelling of the story that I had been taken off to dunk when I fell. If I tell the story in person, people look at my 5'6" frame and consider for a second whether they think I could do that. Their confusion makes me smile. The fall broke my left tibia just below my kneecap and my left ulna in a grotesque mangling. I was still picture the disfigured arm. I only looked at it briefly, but it is an image I've never quite shaken. The next thing I remember after the fall was trying to calm down my hysterical younger sister. I shielded my arm from her as I tried to console her, and once I got her attention, convinced her to go call our mom. While she was out trying to track down a payphone, I stood to try to walk to the training room. I felt instant pain, so I sat down again. I think I did something to my knee, too, I calmly told my coach. He and the trainer carried me to the training room where I had never actually been. They set me on a table, and because the break in my arm was obvious and they didn't know what I had done to my knee, they put full limb air casts on both of them. By the time my mom arrived, the shock had worn. As I tried to put on a tough face, I knew I would not be able to play in the next day's playoff game. My new reality grew darker when I realized I wouldn't be going to the weekend's winter formal dance either. A small tear rolled down my cheek for the first time. A few others followed in response to the flood of physical and emotional pain, but I regained control quickly because I was too tough to cry. They put me under for x-rays and to set my arm. And when I came to, the nurse told me a man had come to check on me and was sitting on the waiting room. Every part of me wanted it to be my dad, but I knew it probably wasn't. My soccer coach was the one man who showed up for me that first night. My dad's disastrous visit was the next night. My older sister was away at college, and my mom was with my younger sister and brother at our team's playoff basketball game. I knew the playoff game had started, but there was no way to get game time updates, texts, or live streams. I sat watching the hospital TV instead. Then my dad came in. I smelled the alcohol in his breath before I heard him talk. He sidled up next to the bed, pulling up a chair as he spoke. I cannot tell you what he said, what he asked, or how he might have tried to be there for me that night. All I know was he was drunk, and I wanted him to leave from the moment he walked in the room. He was not good at dealing with injury, and I was in no shape to handle his brokenness too. So that moment was that entire episode of the time in the wheelchair and my injury, and there was so much wrapped up in that experience for me. But the pause actually started my process of self-reflection that I'm not sure without it, I would have kind of taken on as really my life journey. So I'm always grateful for that episode in my life, for what it did, honestly, because I am not the same person that I would have been had I stayed healthy and gone through the whole trajectory and never had to sit and look at my life from the perspective of stillness, which is what that forced. So those impactful moments were part of what I had to work through by the time our kids were in the mix, because I hadn't yet. I got through college, I worked through more injuries, I really pushed myself to just lots of pain and upset the whole time I was through college. I played Division I, but it was a painful limp. Like I just limped through college because I was just kind of a broken, hurting unit for a lot of reasons, mostly tied to dysfunction and broken home more than to actual injury. And that's something that I think we sort of forget as adults, that what kids are exposed to emotionally really does impact everything that they do, whether they're trying to play a sport, whether they're working in a classroom, all of it is impactful. And so we go all the way through adult, we can go all the way through our entire lives without trying to attend to some of those broken places. But the work that I did changed the way that I parented my kids. So now, no, you don't necessarily have children, but from the adult perspective, about like children in sports that I'm commenting, from the adult perspective, do you feel like there's anything from your story that informs how you show up? And do you have grandkids now too, or do you just so you go watch them play their sports?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now you can show from the layers of adult attendance. How does your story inform how you show up in the adult space?
Well, that's interesting because my granddaughter plays on a hockey team in Boston. This is a big school downtown. You know, there's 400 or so kids in a class. I mean, it's a big school. And she's on the girls' hockey team. But unfortunately, she's on the fourth line, and they don't get much time. So that related to her, my story about when I was a senior, I thought I was going to play. And here I was sitting on the bench. And so I get, you just kind of go with it at the same time. I was kidding her since, she was opening the door for the kids come off the ice. Says, you want to be the best gate opener that out there, and then you encourage the kids going on and off the thing every time. So, your coach knows that. Really? No. So she was, she was a little despondent, and she did talk to the coach and do all these things, but then she got, it's like, it was like first line, second line, third line, first line, second line, third line, then maybe the fourth line.
Right.
So that was her career as a senior. But she loved her teammates and she loved playing. And it was a lot of expense and a lot of time spent going playing hockey. Now she's in the softball where she's a very adequate. Well, she started at third base as a junior, so she's doing really well as a.
So this is her senior year now. So
Yeah.
You're talking about her recent hockey season.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was. I related to that at the same time. She worked really hard. I mean, she was. That's what you got to do. And
yeah.
I don't think she's going to go play in the the next level.
No, but what you pointed out to her is how she can reframe what she gained, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's excellent that you're able to,
Yeah, I definitely related.
yeah, and that's a good like touchstone for her, right?
Yeah.
So how about you? What do you think? Because your individual sports seems like sort of a gentle athletic experience, really, the way you described it. No wheelchair riding or falling out, like face down.
Yeah.
How do you show up as a fan for your nieces and nephews?
I think I try to, I guess, like really focus on the positive, I guess, and also allow them to feel sad, really feel sad. I don't know, there's that moment where they need to feel down or sad about what happened in the game. So like allow that feeling, but also find some specific thing to comment on. Like I don't act so. Also, I don't know a lot about baseball, so I try to engage with them through questions too, like about what happened, so they can explain to me.
That's actually a really good strategy. And I think too many parents who do think they know don't, and even if they do know, asking those questions gives them the experience. The experience becomes theirs. So I think that's a really excellent strategy. And I also love that you let them feel sad.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that a lot of parents don't recognize the value in the sadness. That's part of what we're teaching children how to do. And if it's winning all the time and they're playing all the time and they never have the other side of the coin to deal with loss, and there's a whole chapter in here about grief, and we haven't given them any tools, that's what sports really should do, is to provide that. So I love that you let them feel sad, because oftentimes parents want to jump in and make it feel better now. Okay, and I interrupted you, but so far I'm giving you an A+ for how you show up on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, I try. I know, like I have sometimes thought what you have thought when I'm with my nephews and nieces about how impactful you can be inadvertently.
Yeah,
just what you say, what may seem like offhand or something coming quickly out of your mouth may be remembered for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So.
And you don't know which one it's going to be.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I've coached some of these girls that I'm coaching now. I've coached them for 4 years, and things that I'm sure I was just so memorable that I did last year in season, and I'll bring it up and I'll say something, and then they look at me, they're like, "Do you remember that? I don't remember any of that." So even though I'm thinking that that's the thing that's going to stick, and I'm sure that it will, it is likely something that I don't want to stick is the thing that they're going to remember. So yeah, I think it's important to remember that.
Yeah, I think that I like the idea of the introspection about our own stories helps us to inform what we want and what to model.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of people that haven't processed that, and then they have tantrums on the sideline like a child might, honestly. And I feel for them that there's so much unattended emotion they have not dealt with, and that's likely what they're expressing. And the fallout happens then to be really damaging to the kids. That's the really hard part about that. All right, Ann, how about you? How do you show up?
Well, so I did not get to go to many of my niece and nephew's soccer games. I went when they were like really, really little, but they lived in Milwaukee and I wasn't close by. And it was interesting because it was like, don't keep score. But the kids
littles.
were,
Yes.
they were, you could tell.
Yes.
And it was like, don't bunch up. It was just kind of fun to watch because they were all at the ball. Like it was just like, and then the goalie was spinning in the goal. And, so I never had like, yeah, they were just little, so I never got to see when they like grew up. But I always think, you know, it's kind of like, so I like practice because I like practice because you could improve, and I just wanted to like learn and get better. So, but also it's like, yeah, just have fun because when you get so competitive, and you do, and it gets real like tight, and then you mess up, and but I think I don't know, people who like say we should like sports versus academics, I think you need both, because I really appreciate like learning how to be on a team, and also like, okay, you're gonna make mistakes, but you'll get through it, and you know, so and you have to learn a little bit about competition, and you know, it's usually in like a safe environment, so there's just so many skills,
yeah,
and interpersonal skills, and that I think sports,
there's not much else that can replicate it. I mean, there is, you know, science Olympiad, or if there are people in a spelling bee, or if there, you know, there's some competition for the
but
academic
they
part
should
of it.
both be like, yeah, they're both
Yeah.
like amazing things, and so
They can be.
you have to, yeah.
Yeah. There, you know, I'm curious what you are noting is the major shift from when you played, coach. You know, you've got a span of experience. So if you were going to try to quantify what has changed the most?
Yeah, what concerns me, because there was enough kids and we had a team and we were competitive, the towns around it, but now it becomes the elite team. So they pick this kid from this town and this kid from this town. These are the A+ players, and they go traveling and play in Madison, and the next week it's in Indianapolis, the next week it's in Kansas City, the next week it's in India, who knows where, Nashville.
Yeah.
It's like the cost and the ridiculous, and you're plucking, you know, 1, 2, or 3 out of the 100 that
Right.
are, you know, potentially out of the high school here, that they're going to get supposedly the best training and the best experience and the best equipment, the best everything. It's like, but that's not reality. And then,
Right.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, there's families that can afford it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of families that can't afford that. So
Right.
I'm not going on a traveling team. It costs, you know, the guy was telling me it cost them $4,600 last year to play elite hockey in Stillwater. It's like, holy mackerel.
There are families.
That's $5,000.
There are families I interviewed that spend $20,000 a year on one child for their sport. It's and growing every year. I thought with
Crazy.
I thought with the COVID pause that we might have a chance to reset, but it actually just exploded.
Yeah, it got worse.
It did get worse. And there's an entire chapter in here about that. The title of that one is something about nothing kills community like community. And there's more being lost besides money in this whole venture. There are lots of, and this town is a great example of that because of the nature of just numbers in general. If you take even a few kids out of some of the sports to go play elsewhere, there's no place or no one to play with for those who are here. So we're losing local leagues, we're losing local teams, we're losing high school participation. And for not a change in the percentage of the people that make it to college. That percentage stayed the same. So it's not changing the end goal. It's only changing the experience of the families that choose to be.
I worked for 3M, so I know a lot about St. Paul. I only worked there a few years, but mainly commuted. And I think they used to have 6 high schools playing hockey. Next year they'll have 1 out of the whole darn city of St. Paul.
Right.
Highland is the only one of the hockey team left because the kids
They're all in different.
they're all out doing their thing, and the other ones have quit.
Yeah, because there's not enough people to play. And
Yeah,
they can't,
he has 8 coming back at Johnson, St. Paul Johnson, where Irving Brooks he had 8 people come out for hockey.
Yep.
For next year.
And it's sad to me because Minnesota used to be the bastion for how high school sports were supposed to go, because they required at the time back several decades ago that if you were in whatever school district you were in, you played for that youth team all the way up and through your high school. You couldn't cross borders, you couldn't change teams, you had to stay in that community, you needed to play with it. It didn't change the better players getting to where they needed to go. it just made that community experience possible, and it helps to keep kids home to play. And now, because of so many things with private schools, home schools, charter schools, the academy schools, which is another thing that some of the groups will do, they'll say, come to our hockey academy school, you'll play hockey 3 or 4 hours a day, we'll take care of your schooling, and then we'll travel. And the expense, that's where the 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, there's a $60,000 school down in Florida that does that for elite players in a number of sports. But it's so driven by money that it's killing the fabric of what youth sports is supposed to do. And fighting against it, I'm curious let's brainstorm right now, because this is what I found. I found that exact what you're talking about, and saw the devastation of people that were put through the ringer and grinded it out for not any real benefit at the end. So you're looking quizzical. You have an idea, and I just know it. We're going to solve it.
I was just curious, and I think I asked my niece this, but there was always, I think before they went to high school, they were told they had to play on
club team.
On a traveling or whatever,
right, to make
soccer,
the high school team.
And I'm like, but that doesn't seem fair. Or we never had to do that. I mean,
Right.
you tried out and you made it or you didn't.
Yeah, instead of playing football in the fall, you want a traveling hockey team, and then when the hockey season started, you were already supposedly leaps and bounds ahead of somebody who played football.
Right.
Yeah.
But that wasn't true.
Okay. And so I thought, and then I think she said, well, it's not really true.
It
right?
isn't really true. It is
But people get
a
this
lie. They get the impression, and they do feel like parents feel a lot of pressure to make sure that they're choosing the best opportunity for their kids. They don't want them to be left out. They don't want them to be, but to be honest, they also just don't want them to be on the JV team. That's a big part of it for a lot of parents. They really would rather do that, go to the clinics, go to the camps, go to the teams with the hopes of being on a varsity team, not just to play in high school, but to be one of the best ones on the team. And that's what they're all doing that are doing the travel stuff. But it also kills the entire program. So it's a self-defeating sort of proposition. And everyone that I interviewed, luckily because of the way that this project rolled out, I was able to interview people twice. So I interviewed them, and then 7 years later, interviewed them again.
Oh, wow.
So the first time I interviewed them, their kids were 9, 10 years old. The second time I interviewed them, they were 17, 18. So you got to see how did it pan out? What was that? And for the most part, I would have been able to predict at the beginning which kids were probably going to still be on a trajectory to play after high school and which kids weren't. And it all panned out that way no matter what the parents did. And there's so much about the genetics that a child has. If you are not going to be 6'4" and you're only 5'1", you're not going to be a lineman in football. You just won't. So there's a lot where the genetics that play into it that people think, and they don't want to imagine that they didn't give their child their best genetics. Of course they did. So, but that was very interesting to me too, was that the longevity of the research. So I was able to gauge how ineffective actually those decisions were, and actually really damaging for a lot of kids, and heartbreaking to hear how some families broke up because of this. And yeah, so you were going to say something.
I was going to say your research included Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Colorado.
Yep, Colorado. I did my connecting points. So because we live in Colorado for part of the year, so my research groups were in those 3 states primarily, and I had a couple of people in Illinois too. My sister's lived there, so I was able to interview those groups. But the longevity, that group was mostly Minnesota because that was where I was when I interviewed them, and then that's close enough to go back over and interview them again. So yeah, that was that. But
so then, how do you fix it?
how do you fix it?
I mean, do high school coaches expect it?
So
is
it does make kids better. I'm not going to lie. And that, but so, I've had, and I've seen the trajectory of that from my time being here. I've been coaching for 10 years. I saw a group of 4th graders that were going to be really intense about going over to Minnesota to play, because that's where the club teams for soccer are. They're better teams are over that way. And what happened was a few of them were able to continue that because it's such pressure on the family, and just everything. So there's a few that can do it, but then the group around them isn't as robust because they didn't stay here. So I also, for the boys, saw it happen the other way, where the parents wanted to build it here and they brought in coaches to them and they brought in and they did experiences for them here. And that group all stayed together. The percentage of the kids that are going to go to college is the same. So to convince people, it's okay to just bring some talented coaches here, bring the right sure, it matters what you're being taught if you're going to get better at a sport. So that does matter. You can't just decide that everybody's just going to go out and I wish we could all just go out and play, pick up all the time now and still have the gains that these kids are gaining because they're incredible athletes now, so much better than I was at their age. And it's just a different world. They have, but to the expense of their health too. There's a lot of injury happening for these kids at a level that has never been seen before. They're doing way more than we did. When we would get tired, we'd stop. They don't. So anyway, you have a fix? You have an idea?
I don't know if I have a fix, but I know that my sister, I hear a lot about, what's going on, like with other people. Oh, my oldest nephew wants to do something with this friend, but they're traveling, they're on the travels, whatever team. And I know that her kids don't want to be on a travel team where they can't be with they can't hang out with their friends on the weekend, or they have to go. So it's something that, at least right now, they see that disadvantages of.
Okay, so they're staying home. They're just making a family decision.
Yeah, they're doing. There's local away, games nearby, but they're not joining teams that travel distances or. At least so far. I mean, the oldest is going to go into high school, and so the high school might be doing the things that high schools do, but not they're staying with the local stuff.
So we just need families to make decisions one at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of value in. It seems like there's a lot of value in word of mouth. The word of mouth was going the other direction, right? So maybe we can
get the word out.
Mouth.
Get the word out that this, yeah. Hence my effort. This is this is my offering to the world of, you don't have to get so crazy about it, and probably better for your children if you don't.
Well, there's a lot of people wanting to fix the problems of loneliness and people wanting to fix the problems of isolation. And here's an example of a way that you could do something that helps prevent loneliness and community dissolution.
Yes.
And save yourself some money. Yeah. Save your kids and yourself some stress.
Here's the market. This is what we need to do. This is my flyer. It's going to say, choose to stay in your community to, one, build community, which is so important for that isolation piece. And we desperately need to have that just build again. I mean, I feel like we've lost too much and sports are not helping with this. It will save you money. And it'll also save the climate, which is another thing that I found in my research, because there's talk most he would just take me to the playground. And I sat fascinated. I asked him, and what do you mean you go to the playground? I was like, yeah, we just go to the playground together, and everybody would play, and then they'd bring frisbees or they'd play. But the kids, when I had a chance to talk to one of his kids, that was their favorite thing, that they were just playing with their dad all the time. And that was so important to them. And I thought, why are we putting all of these other things out there as the most important thing, when really family, time together, building community, having an idea about what movement is really supposed to mean for us as humans, and that it doesn't really matter if you're very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you push through to the end, like that is what matters, right? Because it is what matters. And I think it's just getting that messaging out to people to be confident that that's the decision that's really going to be best for their family. Because it's not worth breaking up relationships between kids and their parents, and then parents with each other. I mean, of course, it's not the only thing that broke up some of these families, but it definitely was a stressor.
Well, I know that you said that you got the varsity, so the juniors and seniors, you got the JV, this the feeder program, but then a lot of kids that quit when they're 15 or 16, and then they're playing on these club teams.
Right.
And even Minnesota actually televised the high school, club team
Is that a club
championship.
team championship?
Yeah,
Oh my
it's like,
goodness.
so like, there's another place to play here.
Yeah.
But if but you said that you could have 12, then there's no place to go.
Right. And we don't have the other place for them.
Yeah.
And I don't make cuts in the teams that I don't have to, but there are some high schools that have to just for numbers. But then where else do they go? And I love that about Minnesota, because they really didn't have a cut for hockey. Like you made the varsity, you made the JV, but then they'd have gold, and so they had other levels. So as long as there were enough people to make a team, they would, and the kids would play, and that's the way it should be. So however we can make that happen, one team at a time. So I don't have any idea what time it is. Okay. Oh my gosh, it's already. This has been a good conversation. Yeah. So if there's any last minute questions,
Are you going to put this on TV?
I'll put it on YouTube.
Yep. This is how we're getting the message out first.
Right.
I want the rights and royalties.
You
It will
have
be
to
on
sign
YouTube.
off. You have to sign off that you're
There may be a little gap in the middle.
because you lost an internet. Who knows how long that was?
There was a lightning strike somewhere between here and
I'll let you know.
it was churning up when I came in. It was,
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Just
it
starting
was like
to
there's something gonna happen.
So yeah, it's like do high schools need to like think about things, or is it at an earlier level?
I think it starts a little earlier than that. I would
Word.
say end of elementary school, middle school is where that's the bulk of where the thoughts about trying to go somewhere else for something better. I fear for high school sports. I really do. If it continues on the trajectory that it is, we might lose high school sports in the next 10 years. And I hate that I predict that, but
Why do you say that?
because the clubs will entice too many kids away from high school.
Oh, okay.
And I've seen it happen in other communities around the country, especially for soccer. They basically tell the kids not to play high school, and that they'll be able to get them to their tournaments and the showcases and the college things, and that's why you don't play high school, because for them there's no value in the community, the things that really do, I think, make the human experience worthwhile. That's not what they sell. So it's happening already. And I think as soon as football starts to have something outside of the high school, we might start to see it go faster. So
which sports have been early? So is it like basketball, soccer?
hockey, basketball, soccer, where the kids will go for programming, fourth and fifth grade. They'll start to try to find those travel teams.
It has been interesting because one of the big sports is now shooting.
Yeah.
And
Trap
kids,
shooting.
there's a lot of kids in that, which is they're outside, they're
Yeah.
doing something.
That's great.
Unfortunately, they're ruining their ears, but
Make sure they have really good earplugs.
I say I can't stand shooting for more than 10 shots. Again, believe it, that's out there an hour shooting all those bullets. But there's some other sports that
Yeah.
get them out of away from their computers and their
Well, and
phones.
esports are the fastest rising.
Oh,
sport.
yeah, yeah.
Which,
Stouts got
yeah,
a good one
They
there.
do, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Because for me that the physical exercise, the being outside, those are also really valuable things. Besides, you get the competitive part for the esports, and belonging, which I mean those are good, but I think there's it makes me that's rising for the high schools too. They want to just keep the kids engaged in something, and so esports have gone really like that's one of the fastest growing sports. So yeah. Maybe I'll come back in 10 years with look, we solved it. And now I wrote this other book about how we changed it all here, starting in a Dragon Tales bookstore.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming. Yeah.
I want to get the book for my sister. I mean, for the last, let's see. Anyway, so they've really almost all the kids have done baseball in some way or another, and they've also done other sports. Like right now, I'll flip this
Sure. Okay.
in, or soccer, and they've mostly had good experiences, but they've also seen like, okay, that coach is not the coach that we want to have with the kids because look what we see them doing, or look at those parents, and they're not
Finding the right environment for the family, which is good. I think there's a lot of people that feel pressured to be in an environment, even if they don't like it, because they think that's what they're supposed to do. And that's where I wish people would just stop for a second, look at it, like, is this really serving your family? Even if everyone around you says this is exactly what you need to be doing, if your child is in psychology, like it's meeting a psychologist because it's too much, like take a look. Like this is not probably the best environment for them. So
I was impressed as a early coach in hockey. The kids were 5 and 7, and AHOS, which is American Hockey Association. Yeah, they required the coaches to have training, and it's like, and I think I don't know if all sports are doing it, but they did a very, very good job. Of course, you had to want to be a coach and know something about the hockey, but they had some good training, and they made us go to these clinics, and it was really good. But fifth grade basketball league. Nobody's got any training there.
right. And I think honestly the way to put the best training with the rec and in-house league, that's not where the training is happening, but it should.
Yes.
Because that's actually where the 7-year-old decides that they hate it because they've got a bad coach. But we put all of our training in the elite kids and with the travel stuff. And other countries in the world have figured this out. They have their best coaches who are best trained with the youngest, most in-house kids. And it's a lot better situation for everybody. So you're right. They do need to make sure that the training gets, at least with the kids who are starting in their families, the parents could use some, they could use some information too. So, yeah. Well, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. Nice to meet you officially, because I do know that I have run across you. Ed Rothke, did you coach with him? Yeah. Okay, that's why. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.